Warning: this video is not sponsored or related to Wizard Comics or its affiliates. The views are of the cast and creators and do not reflect those of others. Furthermore, this video may or may not contain coarse language. You have been all equally warned. Hey guys, it's Will here with Wizard Comics, coming at you again with another one of these videos, on to our second video of this series, this little mini-series we're going to do about getting ready for tournaments and events and how to and all that jazz. If you haven't seen the first video, quick recap. We talked about how to find the information, how to know if you're ready for it, and what to look for documents at the store or something to see what you need to bring and stuff for the events. So going into that, we're going to go into our second video where we're going to talk to you about some more stuff. This one we're going to go more in-depth about things. So, and based off that, you found the information, you're ready to go, you got the lists, what do you do next? So we're hopping into this. We got preparing yourself for an event, how to find info on what to bring, and any extra advice that we could give you. So this one's going to be a little bit more just like repetitive from the last video. If you kind of got the gist of it from the first video, or you kind of know how to look for something, you can skip this one. This one's just going to be a little bit more in depth and a little bit more repetitive to it, because knowing and reading the information, especially as someone who's judged at events or ran events, is a huge thing, especially when it comes to more of these more complex games, and where a lot of stores and events and formats change little tiny rules that can affect the game in huge ways. Just reading and understanding the rules really helps a judge and makes them feel good and that they've done something and that they actually matter in the event, and that when they say a rule, they know that you guys would understand where they're coming from and that they don't need to dig out this huge book, and it stops a lot of arguments and things. So going into that, we're going to preparing for an event. So preparing for an event, you've decided you found one, you're going to go to one, you've signed up, and you got the document. Now what do you do? So this can be anything from getting yourself, like booking your days off, figuring out if you got more friends going to join your team, going to drive out there, when to drive out, when to eat, making sure you have all your stuff with you, even just emotionally and mentally just psyching yourself up for this, because I know, especially if you go to those huge ones, like I'd recommend that if you're to go to any event, go to a smaller one to start, because if you go to those huge ones like Gen Con or face-to-face events or Star City events, it's going to be a huge thing, and you're just going to be a lot of players. And so going to a big event like that, probably not a good idea. So smaller ones would definitely be a great place to start. A lot of your friends are going to be there. So that's kind of how you can prep yourself. Make sure, like, set your cases or your bags in front of your door. Prep the day. Book the days off. Make sure you get enough sleep and that your friends are good to go and all that stuff. You know when you're getting picked up. Which, on that note, brings us straight into the next topic of this short video, which is how to find info and, like, what do you bring to an event like this. So normally, safe bet, of course, is, and this is a big one, which a lot of people, sometimes they get a little bit too rushed or they're tired from work, and then the things next day, especially for those who have to travel to events like the larger ones. If you guys are going to a larger one and you've been to tournaments before, there's always that rush where it's like a day of travel to go, and you don't want to be the guy who's like 2 hours into the travel and all of a sudden your like rule book is at home or something, or your sideboard was left in the other deck box you were using. So huge one here. Make sure to triple check your bags and your army cases or whatever you have for holding your stuff when you go to these events, just to make sure. Take a breather, don't rush it. Even if you have to do it 2 days ahead because of work and then you have to travel. Whenever you're not stressed out would be a best one. And usually if you do forget a huge thing or a small thing, a lot of places will, especially if you go to these smaller ones, won't be too harsh on you for it, or they may allow you to change some things with what you got, or somebody at the event might have other stuff in their car that you might be able to borrow from them for the event. Just make sure you return them and explain your situation to people. And if players usually have issues with that, then especially if it's just a really tiny thing like, hey, so the Space Marine is going to be my Eldar Farseer, just because he's so unique, he'll affect the thing. I bought it and stuff like that, blah blah blah. And if you, especially if you've been playing at that store, the guy who's running it or one of the judges will be like, yeah, I've seen him playing with it before. If the guy starts causing a huge hassle, that might not be the type of guy you want to play with, and that will lead into our next video, which will be where we go in depth about scoring and sportsmanship and all that stuff. So that's basically what's going to be about, a video about how, like, what to find information, and well, that's what to bring. So the second part of this, because this is a two-parter of this category, is how to find the info. We went over this in the last video about like just a generic thing, but how do you find more in-depth info? So a great one is ask the store employees. So when you're in the store, they'll usually have like the documents saved on their computer, something that you can print, and if you ask them for it, they'll print it for you, or you can find it on their social medias. So that's some places where you can find information about events and what to look for. So on the screen here, we're going to pull it up. We have a sort of picture here. This is what you call a list, or an army builder list, or a deck list. These are things what you're going to find as part of the things, your documents. Each game will have their own unique one. The information pages that you can find documents online or on pages or in store, which like we showed in the last video, will basically tell you how to fill these out. And these are usually handed in before an event, either through a digital app like Best Coast Pairings, or in person with a fee if the event is asking for a fee. And for those who might think like, well, why do I need to pay a bunch of money for an event? Like, especially some of those larger ones where you're paying like $100 a ticket, or smaller ones where you may be paying $10 to $20. Little thing that you like gotta think about this is a lot of these events are being ran by volunteers, and they have to pay for these event halls. They gotta pay for guests. They gotta cover store area and flat and pricing, and all that space, like in a smaller store that might not be accessible by customers that now can't get past a player because they're taking up some space, or maybe the area is too small and they kind of have to squeeze in there. This kind of covers for that loss of expenses and stuff like that, and helps keep these stores open and keep these events going. And the larger and more people they get in, the more and more they can afford, and it just gets better and better. The boards upgrade, better pricing. Even possibly some places have food that gets added to your feeds. Like at these larger events, they count towards your weekend pass to it, because sometimes these larger ones are also conventions. So you get your pass into the convention as part of your ticket. Plus you get maybe some sort of food or larger pricing and more categories and stuff. But with that, we're going to go cut this video here, because there's not much more I can say about this stuff twice. So with that, any extra advice I can think of, not really much. Just make sure you sleep. Make sure you're going in with the right attitude. You're not cranky. Triple check, even have to do it 2 days ahead. Make sure everyone's set and going if you're playing a team-based game. And just make sure everything's with you. Bring some, maybe like if you're playing a card game, bring some extra sleeves in case they get dirty. That'll match. If you're playing a miniatures game or a board game, make sure you bring some glue, like a little bit of an emergency glue in case something breaks. Take photos. Here's a huge one. We're going to go into this with the Magic section, but this also applies to, I'd say, any game, anything, even video games. Take pictures. When I say take pictures, I mean take pictures of all your stuff and save a copy on your computer at home and save a copy on your phone. Because if you go to these events, especially some of these larger ones, everyone's heard a horror story about someone's stuff getting snagged, or someone breaks something and their opponent won't hold on to it. So if you have these photos that show everything you owned and kind of like how it was set up ahead of time before the event, And even if you take one at the event with all your stuff kind of opened up in your, like, say, up your hotel or in your car before you leave the parking lot, this way if someone does get into an argument about, like, you didn't own something, or they broke something of yours and they won't accept it, or someone snagged it and they're using it in a different game or a different event, you can show them the picture, especially if you set it so the picture is taken, it has a timestamp, then that way you can prove that it's yours. And a lot of event organizers will, and go with anything in the game. You might have a digital phone to track life counters, anything, but written down paper or physical proof of a photo will trump any other sort of thing, either word by mouth or maybe a Facebook post. If someone has a timestamped photo of the event or a video that they made before the event that's timestamped that shows them with the thing, telling what it is in detail, it'll go to them. So with that, you guys, we're going to end it here in this video, and we're now going to step into the real meat and grittiness of this, which is what to expect at events, do's and don'ts, and what it's going to be like playing those events. And this will just be a generic cover for everything, and then after that we will go deep into the specifics for each category of miniature gaming and TCG gaming, as those are the two biggest. So we'll see you guys in those videos.